The greatest adventure is what lies ahead. Today and tomorrow are yet to be said.
Hello everyone, this is No One of Consequence, back again with a new video. This is episode 41 in a series which recounts my ongoing Dungeons & Dragons campaign, which is now in its 9th year. If this is your first visit to the channel, you might want to go back and start with part 1 of this series so everything will make more sense. And as always, spoiler alert, in this video I will be revealing details found in this adventure module. And as a reminder, this is the current makeup of the adventuring party. If you recall last time, several of the characters had been killed by white dragons and their breath weapon, and they had managed to recover some of the characters, but 2 of them were still missing, Aramis the fighter and Garrett the thief. And where we left off last time, the surviving characters had returned to a cavern that they had previously found where the frozen corpses of some other adventurers had been encased in blocks of ice. And when they had first found these bodies, they could see that there were some valuable items encased in the ice with them. And so, because some of the characters had lost magic items to the dragons, they went back to this place to try to retrieve some of these valuables to help re-equip themselves. So after that, what the characters decided to do, by now, if you recall, a couple of days had passed, so they wanted to see what was going on down in the lower levels of the Frost Giant lair. So what they ended up doing was Thorol cast invisibility on Obrak, and he went down by himself because he has infravision and wouldn't need any light. So he went into that entrance cavern at the lower levels, and he found 2 frost giants posted as guards, presumably watching for the characters to return. But these frost giants were apparently bored and talking to each other and not really paying attention, and this allowed the Obrak to sneak past them undetected. And another thing that Obrak learned was, if you recall last video, that entrance in the western wall where the frost giants were was blocked by a boulder, and that boulder was pushed aside. But also on the eastern wall of this cavern, the entrance to the dragon's cavern, that boulder was also pushed aside. So as of right now, at least, those 2 entrances were unobstructed. So Obrak went back to the other characters and told them what he had found, and so they spent some time making a plan as to what they were going to do. And what I did in Roll20, I just moved the players to a blank page, and they were able to use the drawing tools to sketch out their plan. And so what they settled on was that Varys would go down there, and you can see the stairs to the lower level at the top of the screenshot. Varys would go down there and cast his hallucinatory terrain spell in front of those giant guards, which should allow the rest of the party to approach undetected as long as they were careful and quiet. And a couple of rulings I had made on that spell, because Varys has it and he likes to use it, and some of the rules about it are vague. So what I ruled was that on a hallucinatory terrain, there is basically a front side and a back side, and the front side is the illusion, which is intended for the targets of the spell, and the back side, which would typically be where the caster is located. You can also see the illusion, but it's semi-transparent, and so therefore you can see whatever's going on beyond it. So anyway, Varys was going to go down here and cast hallucinatory terrain in front of those guards, and it's pointed out by the red arrow. But then also before they came down here, Niobe, the cleric, was going to cast Silence 15-foot radius on a couple of small stones, and the plan was to throw those in front of the two openings on either side of this main cavern, and those places are pointed out here with the arrows. And the plan was so to try to prevent sound from attacking those guards, G1 and G2. They wanted to prevent sound from that battle from carrying into the side caverns and trying to delay alerting anyone else for as long as possible. So their whole plan began with Varys and Obrak, who was still invisible, to go down first. They both have infravision and they wouldn't need any light source. And this would hopefully allow Varys to get close enough to those giants to cast his hallucinatory terrain spell without alerting the giants, because the range at which he can cast that spell would be greater than the frost giant's infravision range. And then once that spell was in place, then the rest of the party would come down and they should be unobserved by the frost giants. So Obrak and Varys went down and did that part, and the rest of the party came in concealed behind the hallucinatory terrain spell, and where that is I've just represented by that line of stones, just to so everybody could see where the spell was in place. And so the rest of the party came down here, and again they were being careful to be quiet so that those frost giant guards would hopefully not notice their approach. Then the next phase of the plan was to cast those two stones with silence 15-foot radius on them. So that was done. You can see that semi-transparent circles on the bottom half of the screenshot representing the silence effect. And also at this point, Gorbadoc was going to throw a torch up there to illuminate the area where the giants were. And then finally after that, Varys was just going to dispel the hallucinatory terrain effect, and Thorol would follow up with a fireball spell cast at those frost giant guards. So all of that was done. Here's the fireball spell going off, and Thorol decided not to center it on those guards. He wanted it to extend into that side entrance on the western wall to hopefully catch any giants that might be lurking in that area. So after the fireball dissipated and the silence, of course, was still in effect, and you can see those areas on this screenshot. And so you had Varys, Niobe, and Obrak all ran up to engage in melee. Gorbadoc had a crossbow of speed, which he started using, and Thorol cast a haste spell on everyone. So right off the bat, when combat was initiated, the characters rolled a couple of critical hits, but also Gorb rolled a fumble. You can see that on here. But the critical hits, along with the haste spell, combined to help the characters defeat these giants fairly quickly. So once the guards were defeated, Gorbadoc ran up to find the silence stone along the western wall, and what he wanted to do was pick it up again and toss it further into that side cavern where the alarm horn had been sounded in the last video, to again try to keep that sound from alerting others. And it took him a couple of rounds to find that silence stone, and by the time he did, Obrak had managed to move up there as well, and they're pointed out here. And meanwhile, Niobe ran back and picked up Thorol's lantern, which he had set down on the ground when he was casting his spells. And also Varys cast a mirror image spell on himself. So the battle moved into that western area from the main cavern. Gorbadoc had thrown the silent stone in there, and again you can see the semi-transparent area of effect, and the plan worked briefly is to keep that alarm horn from being sounded, and the arrow points out another frost giant that actually is carrying that horn. And like I say, it worked briefly, but the giant with the horn realized what was going on, and so he just moved further, deeper to the west into the cavern area until he was out of the silence. And then he began blowing on the horn again. So this frost giant up front, there where Niobe is, the characters ganged up on him. It was defeated, and Thorol cast a light spell in the face of that giant that was using the horn to temporarily disorient him, and also so he wouldn't see what the characters were doing and be able to tell the others. So what they decided to do was to retreat back out of this room, at least for the time being, because they any giants further in the caverns would have heard the alarm, and the characters had no idea how long it might take them to respond or how many there might be responding. So they decided to retreat back out of here while they still had the haste spell going on, and see what happens. And but instead of just fleeing this area entirely, what they decided to do was go across the main cavern to the entrance where the dragon cave was. I mentioned earlier that Obrak had seen the rock blocking it was still pushed aside, and they were a little puzzled that all of their activity had not brought about any reaction from the dragons, because even though the silence spell was there, they thought that the fireball out in this main area, just the light and so forth from that, might attract the dragon's attention, but nothing had happened. So they decided to go see what was going on, and of course they also wanted to see if they could find out more about what had happened to Aramis and Garrett, who, as I pointed out at the start of the video, were still missing. So what they did, Obrak volunteered to go in by himself first. Again, he has the infravision, so he could see without light, and the rest of the party would wait out, really just inside this entrance to wait for Obrak to come back. So Obrak went in. He did not see any sign of the dragons, and he also noticed that the big pile of loose treasure that had been there before was now gone. However, he did find Aramis's still frozen corpse standing there. You can see it in the gloom. And not far from there, he also found Garrett's frozen body as well. So Obrak summoned the rest of the party inside, and they began to recover the last two bodies of the missing characters. And they did notice that most of their valuables had been looted as well, but at least the bodies were still here. And just exploring deeper in this dragon cave area, they discovered a hole in the ceiling of the cavern high up overhead, and they could see daylight streaming in through this hole, and even snow was floating down through the opening and onto the floor of the cavern. And so now they knew how the dragons were able to come and go from this place, and also it would explain why the dragons knew about, first it was a mule, then they polymorphed into a cow, and the dragons got mad. And so this would explain how the dragons were able to spy on the characters outside and know what they were doing. I think what the characters did, they even used that hole in the ceiling to get everyone out. I don't remember the exact details, but I'm pretty sure they used that to get everyone out of this place without having to go back out into the main cavern where the frost giants were probably moving around. So back in this scene, back at the hideout cave, the frozen characters were thawed out by the fire, and then they used holiday reward items to resurrect them so as to avoid the constitution loss that would be that would come along with a raised dead spell. But I had mentioned earlier that most of their valuables had been taken by the dragons, but they were surprised that Garrett's frozen body still held the intelligent giant slaying sword that he had found in the Hill Giant adventure. Even though a lot of his other stuff was missing, he still had that sword. So once Garrett was thawed out and resurrected, the sword was able to communicate with the rest of the party through him, and it had a story to tell. And this is a screenshot from the last video, but the sword explained that after Niobe and Gorb had escaped with the pumpkin carriage along with Varys' frozen body, the dragons were unhappy about their encounter with the characters. And the dragons had been wounded by the characters, and it was clear to them that living amongst these frost giants was no longer a guarantee of undisturbed peace, and so therefore they decided to leave. And the sword said that the frost giant Jarl himself came here and tried to appease the dragons with more treasure, and he also promised the dragons that the rest of the characters would soon be dead. However, the dragons were not convinced, and they began to gather up their treasure hoard and leave that cavern. And the sword explained that the dragons were going to take it along with the characters' other valuables, but as soon as one of the dragons touched the sword, it was able to communicate with them, just like it does with Garrett. And it told the dragons that it was a cursed sword, and that it was this curse that led to the party's near total defeat by the dragons. And the sword also implied that if they took it, the dragons risked transferring the curse onto them. And of course, the sword's real motivation for wanting to be left behind was that it hoped to be recovered by the surviving characters, and then it would have a chance to slay more giants. Being a giant slaying sword, the last thing it wanted was to be carried off by these dragons and secreted away in a dragon horde somewhere, and who knows how long it might be there. So it wanted to be left behind in the giant caves. And so the sword ended its story by saying that the dragons were also planning to eat Aramis and Garrett. However, the sword convinced the dragons that doing even this might impart the party's curse onto the dragons. And the sword's motivation for that was, Garrett was its wielder, and so the sword didn't want Garrett to be eaten, but also it reasoned that the more of the characters that might be recovered, then the greater chance that the sword would have to kill more giants. So in the end, the dragons decided to just take their treasure and leave the bodies of Aramis and Garrett standing where they were, and they left the sword behind as well. And also the dragons said they did eat the party's pig and the cow, which is really the polymorphed mule, so that dragons were not particularly hungry at the moment anyway. So after another day or so of resting and healing and recovering spells, the now complete adventuring party returned to the Frost Giant's lair to continue the fight. Alright, well that's all I have for now. Again, please hit the like button if you enjoyed the video. Consider subscribing if you haven't. Do leave a comment. I do like hearing from you, so let me know what you think. And also, if you know of anywhere that where other people might be that would enjoy the video, please do share it. I've kind of plateaued on the new subscriber count, so I could use your help in spreading word of the channel, and anything you do to help support the channel, I appreciate it. Thanks again. Bye for now.
The greatest adventure is what